Hello and welcome to our presentation on wind power as an alternative energy choice to fossil fuels. This presentation will cover a brief introduction on wind power, followed by discussions on its CO2 emissions, land use, and feasibility in Australia. I'm Sibyl Jia, and I'm going to give an introduction on what wind power is and the environmental context it sits in. Wind power is generated through the harness of kinetic energy of wind by wind turbines. Wind turbines are traditionally used for pumping water and milling grain, but modern devices are most commonly used to generate electricity. The image on the right shows the two types of wind turbines, the horizontal axis one and the vertical axis one, but they both use the same mechanism. When wind blows and rotates the blades that are attached to the rotor will spin the generator to create electricity. When a number of wind turbines are clustered into a single power plant and generate bulk electricity, we call it a wind farm. Wind farms are sited in windy places along hills, fields, or offshore in the ocean. So why do we need wind power? Wind power is one of the emerging alternatives against burning fossil fuels, which is by far the largest contributor to global climate change. In order to preserve a livable planet, as stated in the Paris Agreement, fossil fuels must be replaced by renewable energy in order to reduce emissions to net zero by 2050, and wind power could be one of the clean substitutes. So now let's discuss on its CO2 emissions.
Moving on to the CO2 emission. According to the Australian government, it was estimated that Australia's total greenhouse gas emissions in 2021 were equivalent to 588 million tons of CO2, which is a 0.8% increase compared to the previous year. As shown in the graphs, CO2 emission is mainly generated by the electricity, stationary energy, transport, and agriculture sectors. Most CO2 emissions in these sectors were generated by the harvesting, transporting, and combustion of fossil fuels. In 2021, it was estimated that 40% of the world's CO2 emission came from coal, 32% from oil, and 21% from natural gas. In contrast, wind power is a cleaner solution to energy generation. Most CO2 emissions of wind turbines were generated during manufacturing. Once the turbine is installed and operating, it generates close to zero pollution. Research by the US Department of Energy has looked into the greenhouse gas emissions by different power generating technologies, and they found that for per kilowatt of energy, wind power produces around 11 grams of CO2. In contrast, fossil fuels such as coal and natural gas produces around 980 grams and 465 grams of CO2 respectively. This made coal's carbon footprint approximately 90 times greater than wind power and gas 40 times greater. Therefore, it is apparent that wind power is a cleaner energy source compared to fossil fuels. Now moving on to the land use.
This is Violet. I'm going to talk about the land use. People are always concerned about the impacts for several reasons. The first is whether we have enough land to produce energy, and then is how much of our landscapes might be taken up by these technologies. Finally, is the impact of land use on natural habitats and the environment. Fossil fuel need to be obtained through coal mining more than is needed to mine coal in for fossil fuel power plants and refineries. Fossil fuel industry leases land for infrastructure such as wells, pipelines, and access roads, as well as facilities for processing, waste storage, and waste disposal. Also, it causes damage to the land, like the picture shows, such as land subsidence and destruction of villages. When fuels are burned, sulfur dioxide are produced and released into the atmosphere to form acid rain. When it rains, it causes soil decay, leading to erosion, habitat loss, and depletion. And the wind power is a green source of energy, which energy produced by the large-scale gas flow. Wind energy in Australia are mainly used in the southwest coast, with large plain and flat area, flat terrain, low forest coverage, and rich wind resources. Developing wind energy resources can improve the proportion of clean energy and reduce the pollution. On the other hand, it's been shown that 3 million hectares of land could be used for wind energy to meet the entire country's electricity needs, almost permanently. But land use for oil is not sustainable. When the resource runs out, new places must be found to extract it, thus taking up more land. Another example shows the Roscoe wind farm in Texas used 184 square meters of energy per megawatt. Farmers earn additional income from generating electricity while they can continue their agricultural operations between wind turbines. It means wind farms are almost a secondary use of land. To sum up, wind can be considered as a better alternative to fossil fuels. Thank you.
And now for the feasibility in Australia. Australia has an abundant supply of wind resource that is mainly located in the southern and western parts of the country, close to the population center, as we can see in the picture where most of the wind regions are. So we have in Tasmania and the southern regions of Victoria, South Australia and Western Australia. There's moderate wind energy potential in New South Wales and relatively low potential in Queensland and in the Northern Territory. There's enough wind energy potential to provide energy for a very long time. The westerly winds coming in gives the best conditions for utilizing the wind power. Wind farms need an annual capacity factor ranging from 20% to 40% and sometimes more, which is available in Australia. The key parameters for wind as an energy source are the annual mean wind speeds, the depth of water, and the distance from the shore. Australia has a large amount of sea area and meets the requirement for an offshore wind farm. Wind speeds are quite high in several different regions. They're characterized by shallow water and are also close to the grid, so high potential near populated areas. And now what is currently happening in Australia. So Australia has around 100 wind farms dispersed around the country. You can see in the picture where they are dispersed and their capacity factor. The wind energy sector has had an average annual growth rate of 25.3% for the last decade because of the level of unutilized resources. Wind energy alone currently supplies more than 5,100 gigawatts hour of electricity annually to Australian homes. The quality is higher than other places around the globe. It's 33% in Australia, whereas it's 23% for the latter. Wind energy is set to play a vital role to meet Australia's energy demand more than any other resource of renewable energy. Onshore wind power sources and resources has the potential to provide at least 20% of Australia's electricity within a few decades. The utilization of this renewable energy resources is increasing rapidly. More than 7% of the electric energy consumed in Australia is supplied by wind power. This eco-friendly way of producing energy has led to reduced emissions in the country, therefore reducing the pollution in the environment and improving the health of the citizens.
To sum up, wind power generation is a cleaner and more sustainable renewable energy compared with traditional fossil fuels. In terms of carbon emissions, wind power only generates carbon emissions during the process of production, and the emissions of the energy produced afterward are far lower than fossil fuels. In addition, the consumption of fossil fuels for land is undoubtedly massive. Whether it's mining, transportation, or production, every stop of using fossil fuels threaten and harm the natural habitat and the environment. Besides of this, wind power generators are mainly distributed in areas where rich in wind resources, such as coastline, plain, plateau, and even sea surface, which occupy this land and reduce the damage to the natural environment. Moreover, Australia has very prominent condition in obtaining wind energy due to its practical geographical location. It's mainly distributed in the north and the west part of the country and close to the center of the population, which effectively reduces the loss caused by energy transportation. Hence, it can be seen that, compared with the fossil fuels, wind power generation has many advantages in terms of cost, source, and sustainability. Actually, wind power generation is the largest and cheapest renewable resource in Australia. It contributes 10% of Australia's total electricity in 2020, accounting for 35.9% of clean energy. While fossil fuel is still the premium source of energy in the world, renewable energy will be the trend of the future. And here is all the references we use in the presentation. Thank you for watching.